Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you? Brandon Mitchell pointed at the Bell 429, gleaming on the rooftop of Hayes Aviation. 15 investors burst into laughter. The woman in the faded custodial uniform froze, mop handle gripped in calloused hands. Elena Ramirez straightened slowly. The 34-year-old janitor's dark eyes met Brandon's mocking gaze. The young CEO, barely 30, tossed the helicopter keys. They clattered at her worn sneakers. "Go ahead, pick them up." Brandon's voice dripped with contempt. The laughter grew louder. Phones came out, recording. Someone started an Instagram Live. The caption appeared: CEO challenges immigrant janitor to fly helicopter. Elena's hands trembled slightly. She bent down, picked up the keys. The metal was warm from Brandon's palm. "You serious?" Her voice came out quiet, controlled, carrying an accent Brandon couldn't place. Brandon's Rolex caught the sunlight as he gestured dismissively. "Of course not. You probably think helicopters run on fairy dust and minimum wage dreams." He turned to his audience of wealthy investors. "Imagine someone who cleans toilets for $14 an hour trying to fly a $4 million aircraft. She probably can't even read the instrument panel." Whitney Cooper, Brandon's assistant, stood behind him, phone pressed to her ear. Her whispered words barely audible. "Yes, the deal closes Friday. Tell Dimitri everything's ready." Elena pocketed the keys, said nothing. But something flickered in her eyes. Something dangerous. Something ancient. Something Brandon Mitchell completely missed. The CEO who'd just humiliated her had no idea he was mocking a woman who'd flown combat missions over Chechnya. A Russian Air Force lieutenant colonel who'd logged 2,200 flight hours in the deadliest attack helicopter ever built. A ghost the Kremlin wanted erased. The same woman his Uncle Robert had died protecting. When you underestimate someone based on their job title, you might be humiliating the very person who will destroy everything you've built on lies. Watch what happens when Elena accepts his challenge. Before we dive back into the story, if you hate seeing people look down on others, hit like, comment, and subscribe. Those who don't, they actually enjoy watching others get humiliated. 8 months earlier, Lieutenant Colonel Yekaterina Volkova had made a choice that would cost her everything. She'd refused to bomb a Syrian hospital. She'd recorded her commanding officer ordering a war crime. And she'd become the most wanted defector in Russian military history. Robert Hayes, legendary CIA pilot turned aerospace CEO, had promised her safety. He'd hired her as Elena Ramirez, hidden her in plain sight as a night shift janitor. He'd promised to help expose the truth about Russian war crimes through his Pentagon contacts. Then Robert's helicopter fell from the sky. Mechanical failure, they said. Tragic accident. But Elena knew helicopters. She knew sabotage. And she knew that Robert's nephew Brandon had inherited an $800 million company he had no business running. Tonight, Brandon stood on that same rooftop, selling his uncle's legacy to a Russian shell company for $300 million and a $50 million personal kickback. Tonight, he'd made the mistake of humiliating the one person who could expose him. Tonight, Elena would stop pretending to be powerless. She looked at the helicopter, then back at Brandon. A cold smile touched her lips, the kind of smile that had terrified enemy combatants across 2 war zones. "Okay," she said simply. "I'll fly it." The laughter stopped. Brandon's grin faltered. "But when I do," Elena continued, her accent shifting, her posture changing, becoming something military, something lethal. "You won't want to marry me, Mr. Mitchell. You'll want to run." She walked toward the helicopter. Behind her, investors exchanged confused glances. Whitney Cooper went pale. Brandon's phone buzzed. A text from Dmitry Sokolov. "Stop her. Now." But it was already too late. The janitor they'd mocked was about to take flight. And when she did, she'd burn Brandon Mitchell's empire to ashes. Elena's hand wrapped around the helicopter door handle. The metal felt familiar, comfortable, like coming home after years in exile. Brandon's voice cut through her thoughts. "Wait, you're actually going to—" he started, but the roar of his own investors drowned him out. "Let her try," someone shouted. "You made the offer." "This is going to be amazing content," another laughed. Camera raised. Brandon's face flushed red. He'd meant it as a joke, a viral moment of putting the help in their place. Now his expensive prank was backfiring. "Fine. But when she crashes my $4 million helicopter, remember you all encouraged this." Elena paused, one foot on the skid. She turned back to face him. "Mr. Mitchell, have you ever wondered why your uncle hired me specifically? Why he paid me through a shell company? Why my personnel file is so carefully incomplete?" Brandon's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out." Elena climbed into the pilot's seat. "In about 3 minutes." She closed the door. Through the windscreen, she could see Brandon arguing with Whitney, gesturing frantically. Whitney was on her phone again, speaking rapidly in Russian, a language Elena understood perfectly, though they didn't know that. "Dmitry says abort," Whitney hissed to Brandon. "Something's wrong. She's too calm. We need to—" But Elena was already running through pre-flight checks with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times under enemy fire. Chapter 2. Opening. The Russian Ghost. 8 months earlier, the night had been cold in Damascus when Lieutenant Colonel Yekaterina Volkova first heard the order that would end her military career and nearly end her life. "Target acquired." General Konstantin Petrov's voice crackled through her headset. "Hospital complex. Grid reference 33742. You are cleared hot." Yekaterina's hands froze on the controls of her Mi-24 Hind. Through the gunship's targeting system, she could see the building clearly. Red crosses on white backgrounds. Ambulances in the parking lot. No military vehicles, no weapons, just doctors and patients. "General, confirm target," she said carefully, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I see civilian hospital. No military presence." "I said you were cleared hot, Colonel." Petrov's tone turned icy. "Those are my orders." Below her, in the darkness of the Syrian night, she could see people moving in the windows. Doctors in scrubs, nurses carrying equipment, and in the pediatric wing, her targeting computer counted them. 14 children. Yekaterina had flown 87 combat missions. She'd engaged enemy combatants in Chechnya, Georgia, Ukraine. She'd earned 2 Orders of Courage and the respect of every pilot in the Russian Air Force. She was one of only 12 women ever to fly the deadly Mi-24 in combat. But she'd never been ordered to murder children. "Negative, General," she said quietly. "I will not engage civilian target." The radio went silent for 3 heartbeats. When Petrov spoke again, his voice carried the weight of death. "Then, you have just committed treason, Colonel Volkova. You are hereby—" Yekaterina switched off the radio, pulled up her phone, and hit record on the military channel frequency. She captured everything: Petrov's orders, the target coordinates, the grid references. 7 minutes of a Russian general ordering the deliberate bombing of a hospital. 7 minutes that would make her the most wanted defector in Russian military history. She banked hard, heading for the Turkish border at maximum speed. Behind her, another Mi-24 appeared on radar. Her wingman, Captain Alexei Morozov, following Petrov's orders. "Yekaterina, don't do this," Alexei's voice crackled. "They'll kill you. They'll kill your family. Come back." "I can't, Alexei, and you know why." The Turkish border appeared ahead. She pushed the helicopter to its limits, rotor blades screaming. Alexei's Mi-24 fell back. He wouldn't cross into NATO airspace, but she would. Because some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. She landed at Incirlik Air Base 30 minutes later, hands still steady on the controls, even as her entire world collapsed behind her. The Americans had been waiting, and so had Robert Hayes. 8 months earlier, Damascus, Syria. Lieutenant Colonel Yekaterina Volkova's Mi-24 Hind gunship hovered 3,000 feet above the Syrian desert. Through her targeting system, the hospital glowed green, 14 heat signatures in the pediatric wing. "Target acquired. You are cleared hot." General Konstantin Petrov's voice was ice through her headset. "General, I see civilian hospital. Red Cross is visible. No military presence." "Those are my orders, Colonel." Yekaterina's 2,200 flight hours, 2 orders of courage, and 12 years of service, condensed into one moment. One choice. "Negative. I will not engage civilian target." Silence, then. "You have just committed treason, Colonel Volkova." She switched off the radio, pulled out her phone, hit record. 7 minutes of Petrov ordering a war crime. 7 minutes that made her a ghost. She banked hard toward Turkey, her wingman Captain Alexei Morozov pursuing. "Yekaterina, they'll kill you. They'll kill your family. Some lines can't be uncrossed, Alexei." 30 minutes later, she landed at Incirlik Air Base. American intelligence was waiting. So was Robert Hayes. The former CIA pilot, now CEO of Hayes Aviation, stood beside a black SUV. 72 years old, silver hair, eyes that had seen every kind of war. "Colonel Volkova." He extended his hand. "Robert Hayes. We have mutual friends in Langley. You can protect me?" Her English was perfect, accent slight. "I can hide you." Robert opened a folder. "Meet Elena Ramirez. Mexican immigrant, no family. Perfect employment history. She starts Monday as night shift janitor at my company." Yekaterina stared at the forged documents. From elite combat pilot to custodian. "This is the protection? This is invisibility." Robert's expression hardened. "The Russians will search for a defector seeking asylum. They won't search for a janitor earning $14 an hour. You'll have access to my facilities, my encrypted servers. We'll build the case against Petrov together, then hand it to the International Criminal Court. Your company does military contracts, which gives me Pentagon access." Robert smiled grimly. "I've been waiting 30 years to nail Petrov. You just gave me the ammunition." Yekaterina looked at her hands, hands that had gripped helicopter controls through combat zones, now destined for mop handles. "How long?" 6 months, maybe 8. Then you testify. Petrov falls, and you get a new life. And if they find me first?" Robert's jaw tightened. "Then I die before I let them take you." Elena Ramirez's first night at Hayes Aviation. The massive aerospace facility hummed with activity even at midnight. She pushed her cleaning cart through executive offices, memorizing layouts, camera positions, security patterns. Robert's office was on the 18th floor. She entered at 2 a.m., finding him still working. "Building's clean," she reported quietly. "Find anything interesting?" Robert didn't look up from his laptop. "Your nephew Brandon visits often. Always after hours. Always accessing your private files." Now Robert looked up. "What files?" Military contracts, maintenance schedules, board communications. Elena set down her mop. He's searching for something specific. Robert's face went pale. He knows about you. No, he's searching for financial records, offshore accounts. Elena had spent 3 nights copying Brandon's computer activity. He thinks you're hiding money. That little... Robert stood, pacing. His startup failed, lost investor millions. He's desperate. Desperate men make dangerous choices. Elena had seen it in war, soldiers breaking under pressure. Watch him carefully. Robert nodded. I will. Meanwhile, I've arranged meetings with Pentagon contacts. Senator Patricia Morrison, Armed Services Committee. She's sympathetic. 3 more months, Elena. Then we move. But 3 months later, Robert Hayes's helicopter would fall from the sky, and Elena would be truly alone. 5 months after Elena's arrival, Brandon Mitchell sat in his uncle's office, fingers trembling as he opened another encrypted file. $847 in his personal account, $15 million in debt, investors demanding payment. His tech startup, Mitchell Analytics, had imploded spectacularly, vaporizing $40 million of venture capital on an AI platform that didn't work. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Mitchell? The voice was smooth, accented. Russian. My name is Dmitry Sokolov. I represent certain interests who followed your financial difficulties. Brandon's throat went dry. Who is this? Someone who can solve your problems. Your Uncle Robert has information we need. Encrypted files about a certain Russian defector. Help us find them, and we'll deposit $50 million in your account. I don't know what you're... Brandon. Dmitry's voice turned to steel. We know about the embezzlement, the forged investor documents, the SEC investigation you've been hiding. We can make all of it disappear, or we can ensure you spend 20 years in federal prison. Your choice. Brandon closed his eyes. 20 years. His life over at 30. What do you need? 2 weeks later, Whitney Cooper, Robert's executive assistant for 8 years, opened her apartment door to find 2 men in dark suits. Miss Cooper. The taller one showed Russian FSB credentials. We need to discuss your family in Kharkiv. Whitney's blood turned to ice. Her sister, her 2 nieces. What about them? The man pulled out photos. Her sister's house, the girls' school, their daily routes, time-stamped and detailed. Beautiful children, 7 and 9, yes? He smiled without warmth. We would hate for anything to happen to them. The war makes Ukraine so dangerous. Whitney grabbed the door frame for support. What do you want? Robert Hayes has encrypted files, server access codes. You will provide them. I can't, he'd know. Then you will help us ensure Robert Hayes has an accident. The man handed her a small black device. Helicopter maintenance port. Plug it in during pre-flight inspection. It will corrupt the tail rotor control software. Gradual failure. Completely untraceable. Whitney's hands shook. I can't murder someone. Then we murder your family. The man turned to leave. You have 48 hours to decide. Choose wisely, Miss Cooper. Elena was cleaning the hangar when she saw Whitney approaching Robert's helicopter. It was 6 a.m., unusual timing. Whitney glanced around nervously, then plugged something into the maintenance port. 20 seconds. Then she disconnected, walking away quickly. Elena moved closer after Whitney left, opened the maintenance panel. Nothing visible. But her instincts, honed through 87 combat missions, screamed danger. She pulled out her phone, photographed the maintenance port, the access panel, the serial numbers. Then she slipped a small GPS tracker under the co-pilot seat. If something happened, there'd be evidence. At 9 a.m., Robert took off for a routine flight to Boston. At 9:47 a.m., his helicopter's tail rotor failed at 8,000 feet. At 9:51 a.m., Robert Hayes died on impact in a Massachusetts forest. Elena watched the news in the janitor's closet, tears streaming silently. The man who'd protected her, the mentor who'd believed her, gone. Her phone buzzed. Anonymous text. "You're next. Run or join him." Elena deleted it, looked at the photograph of Whitney in the device. She wasn't running. She was going hunting. But first, she needed to survive Brandon Mitchell inheriting Hayes Aviation, the nephew who'd just sold his soul and his uncle's life for $50 million. Elena's phone displayed the documents she'd photographed from Brandon's office at 3 a.m. Asset Purchase Agreement. Volkov Defense Systems acquires Hayes Aviation Military Division, $300 million. Closing date, Friday, November 17th. Volkov Defense. The irony burned. Her own family name, weaponized by the people hunting her. She scrolled through the attached files. Page 47 showed Brandon's personal consulting fee, $50 million, deposited to a Cayman Islands account upon transfer of all proprietary files and sensitive personnel records. They were buying her location along with the military contracts. Elena sat in the empty cafeteria, custodial uniform still damp with cleaning chemicals. She had 72 hours before Brandon sold American helicopter technology, and her, to Russian intelligence. Robert's encrypted files were her only leverage. She'd searched for 5 months, finding nothing, until last week, when she'd noticed something. Robert's office computer login screen flickered at exactly 2:47 a.m. every night, a hidden subroutine running for 3 seconds. She'd recorded it, analyzed the code. It was accessing a server partition that didn't officially exist, but accessing it required administrator credentials, which meant Brandon's office. During business hours, when the security systems ran lighter protocols, she needed a distraction, a reason to be on the executive floor when everyone could see her. Brandon stood at the lobby podium. 80 employees gathered. Elena mopped nearby, invisible as always. "Before we discuss quarterly earnings," Brandon announced, "let me address company standards." He walked toward Elena. Her heart rate stayed calm, years of combat training. "This woman has worked here 5 months. Tell me, Elena, what have you learned about aviation?" The employees shifted uncomfortably. Phones appeared. "I've learned some things," she said quietly. "Some things." Brandon grabbed coffee from an executive. "Like what? The difference between pine sol and bleach?" He poured the coffee onto her freshly mopped floor. Dark liquid spread across white marble. "Clean that up." Elena set down her mop. "That's deliberate. Clean it up, or you're fired." Someone started Instagram Live. 2,000 viewers in 30 seconds. Elena looked at the spill, at Brandon, at Whitney Cooper watching from the elevator. Phone pressed to her ear, whispering in Russian. "Da, Friday. The American contracts transfer to Dmitri. No, nobody suspects." Elena got on her knees. The sound echoed through the lobby. She pulled paper towels from her cart, began soaking up coffee. Brandon stood over her, shadow falling across her hunched form. "This is why Hayes Aviation maintains excellence. We don't lower standards for anyone." But while Brandon performed for cameras, Elena was counting. Security guard rotation, every 12 minutes. Executive floor access, badge swipe, plus PIN code. Brandon's PIN, visible from this angle when he'd entered earlier, 83742. The same grid reference from that night in Damascus, the hospital she'd refused to bomb. Robert had given Brandon that code. It wasn't random, it was a message. Elena finished cleaning, stood. Coffee stained her uniform. Better, Brandon said. Maybe in another 5 months you'll learn efficiency. The crowd dispersed. Video already viral. 50,000 views. But Elena had what she needed. Brandon's PIN code, security patterns, and a perfect excuse for her next move. Wednesday, befriending the insider. Tommy Rodriguez, 24-year-old maintenance technician, found Elena examining a discarded helicopter manual in the dumpster area. That's pretty advanced reading for... He stopped, embarrassed. For a janitor? Elena smiled without warmth. You'd be surprised what I read. Tommy noticed her fingers tracing the hydraulic system diagrams with disturbing precision. You know helicopters? I know when something's wrong. Elena showed him a photograph on her phone. Whitney's device attached to Robert's helicopter. What's this? Tommy's face went pale. Where did you get this? The day Robert Hayes died, I documented everything. Jesus. Tommy glanced around nervously. That's a firmware corrupter, military grade. It would cause gradual control failure, totally untraceable. Unless someone photographed it being installed. You have proof Robert was murdered? Tommy's voice dropped to whisper. I have proof. I need access to verify it against server logs. Executive floor. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. when Brandon meets investors on the rooftop. That's insane. You'll be caught. Elena's expression hardened. Robert Hayes gave me a chance at life. Someone took his. I'm returning the favor. Tommy studied her face. Something in her eyes spoke of violence, of capability beyond anything a janitor should possess. What are you really? He asked. Someone who doesn't quit. Elena handed him a flash drive. If anything happens to me, this goes to the FBI. Everything. The murder. The Russian deal. All of it. Tommy pocketed the drive. What do you need from me? Tomorrow at 2 p.m., trigger the fire alarm on floor 12. Give me 8 minutes. 8 minutes to do what? Elena smiled coldly. Save a company from traitors, and maybe save myself. The Bell 429's door handle was cold under Elena's palm. Real. Familiar. Like greeting an old friend after years apart. Wait, Brandon's voice cracked. You can't actually... Let her try, an investor shouted. You made the offer, Mitchell. This is going to break the internet, another laughed, camera raised. Brandon's face flushed crimson. His viral joke was backfiring. Fine. When she crashes my helicopter, remember you all encouraged this suicide. Elena paused, boot on the skid. She turned to face him directly. Mr. Mitchell, your uncle gave me access code 83742. Do you know what that number means? Brandon's confident smile faltered. What? The grid coordinates of a Syrian hospital. The night I refused to bomb it. She climbed into the pilot's seat. The night I became Yekaterina Volkova, instead of just another Russian war criminal. The rooftop went silent. Whitney Cooper's phone slipped from her hand, clattering on concrete. Elena closed the door. Through the windscreen, she watched Brandon's expression transform from confusion to horror. She ran through pre-flight checks with mechanical precision. Collective pitch, responsive, cyclic controls, smooth, tail rotor pedals, nominal, engine temps, green, hydraulic pressure, 150-10 psi, perfect. Every movement was muscle memory from 2,200 combat hours. She lifted off. The Bell 429 rose smoothly, professionally. At 500 feet, Elena activated the external speaker system, the one used for emergency announcements. Her voice boomed across the rooftop, clear and amplified. Brandon Mitchell, born Brennan Volkov, grandson of Russian immigrants. You murdered your uncle for $50 million. Below, investors scrambled for their phones. This wasn't entertainment anymore. October 15th. Robert Hayes's helicopter experienced tail rotor failure at 8,000 feet. Maintenance logs called it mechanical failure. Elena executed a perfect 360-degree turn, demonstrating complete control. But I have photographs of Whitney Cooper installing a Russian FSB firmware corruptor the morning of his death. Whitney collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Today, you plan to sell Hayes Aviation's military division to Volkov Defense Systems, a shell company operated by Dmitry Sokolov, SVR Foreign Intelligence. Elena climbed to 1,500 feet, performing a barrel roll that made investors gasp. You were also selling them something else. Me. The defector Rush has been hunting for 8 months. Brandon ran for the stairwell. 2 men in dark suits blocked his path. FBI agents who'd arrived 10 minutes earlier, after Elena's anonymous tip. I spent 5 months watching you. Elena's voice continued, the helicopter hovering perfectly at 2,000 feet. Copying your files, documenting every meeting with Dmitry, every wire transfer, every piece of treason. She descended rapidly, executing a combat landing that put the skids exactly on their original marks. Perfect. Controlled. Unmistakably. Professional. Elena shut down the engine. Removed her helmet. For the first time, the rooftop crowd saw her face clearly. Not the hunched janitor, but the warrior. Her posture military straight, eyes hard as flint. She opened the door, stepped out. Lieutenant Colonel Yekaterina Volkova, Russian Air Force, defected. She walked directly to Brandon, who stood handcuffed between FBI agents. You offered marriage if I could fly. I accept. You can propose from federal prison. FBI agent Sarah Chen stepped forward. Miss Volkova, we've received your evidence package. Very thorough. Robert Hayes taught me to document everything. Elena's voice finally cracked slightly. He deserved better than a traitor, nephew. Whitney Cooper has agreed to testify under immunity. Agent Chen continued. The Russian operatives at this meeting are being detained. Dmitry Sokolov was arrested an hour ago. Brandon found his voice desperate. She's lying. She's an illegal immigrant, a Russian spy. Actually, Agent Chen smiled. She's a protected witness who's been cooperating with U.S. intelligence for 8 months, and you just attempted to sell classified military technology to a hostile foreign power while murdering a federal assets handler. She turned to Elena. The Pentagon wants to debrief you. Senator Morrison is very interested in your testimony about General Petrov. Elena nodded, exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only grief. Robert said 6 months. He was right about the timing, wrong about who'd be alive to see it. Tommy Rodriguez pushed through the crowd, holding up his phone. The flash drive you gave me? I already sent it to the FBI this morning. Also to the Washington Post, New York Times, and CNN. This story's everywhere. The original viral video, Brandon humiliating Elena, now had 15 million views. But a new video was exploding faster. Elena's rooftop confession and aerial demonstration. 2 million views in 10 minutes. The comments had shifted. She's a combat pilot. CEO just got destroyed by a janitor. This is the most badass thing I've ever seen. Whitney approached Elena, mascara streaming. My family in Ukraine, they threatened my nieces. I didn't want to. I know, Elena said quietly. They threaten everyone's families. That's how they operate. Robert was good to me. I'll testify to everything. Elena looked at the Bell 429, still warm from flight, at the helicopter that had saved her life by letting her prove who she really was, at Brandon being loaded into an FBI vehicle, at the investors who'd laughed at her, now staring in shock. "Mr. Mitchell," she called out as agents pushed him into the car. "About that marriage proposal? I've changed my mind. You're not worthy of cleaning my toilets." The door slammed shut. Elena turned to Agent Chen. "What happens now?" "Now? You testify. Petrov gets indicted. Russia loses a general and a spy network. Hayes Aviation gets new management." Chen paused. "And you get to decide who you want to be next. Elena Ramirez is dead. Yekaterina Volkova can live again." Elena looked at her calloused hands, hands that had held mops and helicopter controls, that had refused to murder children, that had documented a conspiracy from the shadows. "I think," she said slowly, "I'd like to be both."